You think you know him. The white beard, the red velvet suit, the reindeer parking on the roof. He is arguably the most recognizable mascot of goodwill in human history. But delete that image from your mind for a second. Strip away the Coca-Cola ads, the mall elves, and the North Pole workshop. Underneath centuries of marketing and myth lies a real man. And the real man? He wasn't a jolly grandfather figure. He was a radical, fiery, and sometimes violent revolutionary who lived in the hot, dusty Mediterranean. He was a bishop who reportedly punched a heretic in the face during a theological debate. He was a prisoner of the Roman Empire who bore the scars of torture. And his life wasn't about toys. It was about a dangerous, covert generosity that saved lives in a brutal world. We are going to peel back the layers of commercial paint to find the original icon. This is the true, gritty, and surprisingly intense story of Nicholas of Myra. To find the man behind the myth, we have to leave the snowy Arctic and travel back to the sun-drenched coast of what is now modern-day Turkey. The year is roughly 270 AD. The Roman Empire is still the dominant superpower, and Christianity is a growing, but often dangerous counterculture. In the bustling seaport city of Patara, a boy named Nicholas is born. He isn't born in a manger or a workshop. He's born into serious wealth. His parents are devout Christians, part of the upper crust of society, and they raise him with a silver spoon in one hand and scripture in the other. But the story of Nicholas starts with a catastrophe. While he is still a young man, a vicious epidemic tears through the coastal cities. It's swift, it's deadly, and it leaves Nicholas completely alone. Both of his parents are dead. Suddenly, this young man is the sole heir to a massive family fortune. In the ancient world, this is the ultimate lottery win. He could have bought political power, built a villa, and lived in luxury for the rest of his days. But something in Nicholas is wired differently. He looks at this mountain of gold, and he remembers a specific teaching of Jesus. Sell what you own and give to the poor. Most people read that as a metaphor. Nicholas takes it as a direct order. He decides that this money is actually a burden, a tool that needs to be deployed. So, he begins a campaign of radical redistribution. But here is the key detail that defines his entire legacy. He doesn't want credit. In a world where wealthy Romans built statues of themselves to show off their charity, Nicholas goes underground. He starts giving the money away in secret, hiding in the shadows to ensure the recipients never know who saved them. This isn't just charity. It is covert operations. This path leads him to the city of Myra, a short distance from his birthplace. The local church is in a crisis of leadership. The bishop has died, and the clergy are paralyzed by indecision on who should replace him. According to the legend, a voice tells the senior bishop to stand by the church doors at dawn and appoint the first man who walks in. The next morning, looking for nothing more than a quiet place to pray, young Nicholas walks through those doors. He enters as a private citizen and leaves as the Bishop of Myra. He is now a shepherd of a flock in a very dangerous time. This brings us to the most famous story of his life. If you want to know where the stockings by the fireplace come from, it starts here. But the reality is much darker than the Christmas version. There is a man in Nicholas's diocese, a merchant who has lost everything. He is destitute. He has 3 daughters, all of marrying age. In the harsh economic reality of the 4th century, a woman without a dowry, a sum of money to bring to a marriage, had 0 prospects. The father is facing a horrific choice. He has no money to feed them and no money to marry them off. His only option to keep them alive is to sell them into prostitution or slavery. This is the level of desperation we are talking about. Nicholas catches wind of this. He knows that if he walks up and hands the man money, the father will be shamed publicly. So Nicholas waits for nightfall. He creeps through the streets of Myra, hood up, carrying a bag of gold. He finds the man's house and tosses the bag through an open window. It lands inside, clinking on the floor. The next morning, the father finds the gold. He is stunned. He weeps with joy, believing God has sent a miracle. He uses the gold to secure a marriage for his first daughter, saving her life. But Nicholas isn't done. He returns a second time, under the cover of darkness, and throws a second bag for the second daughter. The father, now overwhelmed by this invisible savior, becomes obsessed with finding out who is saving his family. When Nicholas returns for the third time to save the third daughter, the father is ready. He's hiding in the shadows. As the bag of gold flies through the window, the father sprints out of the house and tackles the stranger. He looks up and recognizes the bishop. He falls to his knees, kissing Nicholas's feet. But Nicholas doesn't say, "You're welcome." He demands silence. He makes the man swear by God not to reveal his identity. He wants the glory to go to the divine, not the human. That specific detail, gold thrown through a window, sometimes landing in stockings or shoes drying by the fire, is the DNA of the Santa Claus myth. But let's shatter the image of the soft saint. Nicholas lived during the Great Persecution under Emperor Diocletian. This was an era where being a Christian leader was a death sentence. Churches were leveled, scriptures were burned in the streets. Nicholas was arrested. He wasn't just detained, he was thrown into a Roman dungeon. Historians and forensic anthropologists who have examined his alleged remains have found evidence that suggests he suffered broken bones and chronic pain. He was tortured for his refusal to renounce his faith. He spent years in darkness, unaware if he would ever see the sun again. He was only released when Emperor Constantine took power and legalized Christianity with the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. When Nicholas walked out of that prison, he wasn't a jolly elf. He was a survivor with the physical scars to prove it. This gritty demeanor followed him to the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. This was the Avengers Assemble moment of the early church. Bishops from all over the world gathering to debate the nature of Jesus. The controversy was ignited by a priest named Arius, who argued that Jesus was a created being, lesser than God the Father. This was the Arian heresy. Nicholas, who had literally bled for the divinity of Christ, sat and listened to Arius speak. According to the legend, Nicholas got so angry, so consumed by what he viewed as blasphemy, that he couldn't sit still. He stood up, walked across the council floor, and slapped Arius square in the face. A bishop punching a priest in front of the emperor. It was a scandal. Nicholas was stripped of his robes and thrown back in jail. The story goes that Jesus and Mary appeared to him in his cell that night, returning his vestments because his anger was born of righteous zeal. While historians debate whether he was actually at Nicaea, since his name is missing from some lists, the persistence of this story tells us how his contemporaries saw him, as a warrior for the truth, not a passive observer. As the centuries passed, the biography of the man blended with folklore to create Nicholas the Wonder Worker. The stories became more surreal, acting as allegories for his protection. There is the tale of him stopping an execution, grabbing the sword from the executioner's hand to save 3 innocent men, a testament to his fight for justice. There is the story of him calming a storm at sea, which made him the patron saint of sailors, and explains why you find St. Nicholas churches in almost every major port city in Europe. And then, there is the most gruesome legend of all, the one that cemented his link to children. It involves an evil butcher who murdered 3 boys during a famine and pickled them in a barrel to sell as meat. Nicholas, perceiving the crime through divine intuition, prays over the brine tub, and the boys are resurrected, whole and alive. It's a macabre story, likely symbolic of baptism or conversion, but in the medieval mind, it established Nicholas as the ultimate supernatural protector of children. But the story doesn't end when Nicholas dies in 343 AD. In fact, his body becomes the center of an international heist movie. For 700 years, his bones rested in Myra. But in the 11th century, the region fell to the Seljuk Turks. Christians in Italy panicked. They felt the saint was trapped in enemy territory. But let's be honest, they also knew that possessing the bones of Saint Nicholas would turn their city into a massive tourist attraction. So, in 1087, sailors from the Italian city of Bari launched a special operations mission. They sailed to Myra, broke into the tomb, and despite the protests of the local Greek monks, they smashed the sarcophagus open. They grabbed the major bones, the skull, the femurs, and fled back to the ships. It was a literal kidnapping of a corpse. They brought the bones to Bari, where they built a massive basilica that stands today. But they left the smaller fragments behind. A decade later, sailors from Venice, Bari's rivals, went back and scooped up the remaining small bones. For centuries, both cities claimed to have the real Nicholas. Fascinatingly, modern scientific analysis of the bones in Bari and Venice confirm they belong to the same skeleton. The man was real, and he is currently split between two Italian cities. So how do we get from a Turkish bishop's bones in Italy to Santa Claus? It's a game of telephone played over 1,000 years. In Europe, especially the Netherlands, his feast day on December 6th remained a huge celebration. Children put out shoes for Sint Nicolaas. Say that fast. Sint Nicolaas. Sinterklaas. When Dutch settlers came to New York, they brought Sinterklaas with them. English speakers heard it and anglicized it to Santa Claus. Then came the rebrand. In 1809, writer Washington Irving satirized the Dutch culture in New York, describing Nicholas flying over rooftops. Then, in 1823, the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, what we know as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," changed everything. It stripped away the bishop's robes and gave him fur. It replaced the horse with reindeer. It turned the ascetic monk into a jolly old elf with a belly like a bowl of jelly. Finally, in the 20th century, Coca-Cola ads illustrated by Haden Sundblom standardized the specific shade of red and the warm, grandfatherly face we know today. We have traveled from the heat of Turkey to the snow of the North Pole, from a secret bag of gold to a sleigh full of toys. But when you strip away the elf magic, the truth is actually more compelling. The real St. Nicholas was a man of grit. He was a man who saw suffering and refused to look away. He didn't give gifts to reward nice behavior. He gave to save lives from ruin. He was a defender of the downtrodden and a fighter for his beliefs. So this year, when you see the red suit, remember the rebel bishop underneath it. Remember the man who taught the world that the most powerful gift is the one given in secret, expecting nothing in return. The evolution of St. Nicholas is wild, but I want to know, which version of the story resonates more with you? The magical gift giver from the North Pole, or the gritty punch-throwing bishop from Turkey? Let me know in the comments below.